Greg, thanks for getting up early with us. I can't even imagine what it feels like for you, because I texted with you on Friday, I think it was. I was out to dinner with my family, and I happened to look up at the television, and I was like, wait a minute. That's the SEC network on, and it's actual real live sports that's taking place. And it was women's soccer. And I was like, hey, congrats, you made it, because you were in Nashville on, I think it was March 11th, basically, when everything shuts down. You can correct me if that date's wrong. And I know it's probably felt like 15 years have passed for you since March 11th. Yeah. How gratifying was it to, before we even get to talking about the the SEC being back, how gratifying was it to just have sports going again in the SEC last weekend?
Well, it was great. In fact, I was tied up at the office, so I was unable to watch the start of the game, but it went double overtime tie, as it happens in soccer. So, we played all the soccer possible on that first night. And then, whoever would have thought that on a Saturday in September, the SEC network would have a women's soccer triple header. And what people don't understand, we had a doubleheader Sunday, the logistics of making that happen for the teams, that's enough. But for the TV production, both local and connections, and just to make it all work was really encouraging that we could kind of pull this off, if you will. And it goes back to, there were a series of days. March 11th, we said no fans beginning on Thursday. And then Rudy Gobert happened that night. And then March 12th, we shut the tournament down. And then March 13th, which was Friday, we just stopped everything, weightlifting, spring practice, everything. So to have a return was more than encouraging.
What does it feel like time-wise for you since everything shut down in mid-March to now? You look back now, how long does it feel like it has been to you since March? I feel like, just for what I do, I've lived like 10 years in the last 6 months in terms of what we've done with this show. But I know a lot of what you have been through as well. It has to feel like at least that long for you also.
Yeah, a decade is what I would have said. In fact, Kansas City's first NFL game, they were showing Super Bowl highlights, and I was able to go to the Super Bowl. And we had a few more weeks of normal, but we knew COVID was around. We were preparing even then. But that was like the last full-on experience I enjoyed, and that just seems like eons ago.
It really does. I was at the Super Bowl for that whole week. We did the television show there. Fox had the Super Bowl, and it really does feel like a totally different lifetime. What will your Saturday be like? What is your planned day? And what do you think you will feel when toe meets leather officially and the SEC football season kicks off? Have you even thought about what that experience will feel like?
The last few days I have, usually I say with a smile on my face when the commissioner's job, the best moment on a Saturday is kickoff of the first game, because after that it's, controversies, close calls, correct calls, debates about calls, is there going to be a lightning delay? Who knows, whatever may happen. So I always enjoy when I am able to, that early kick, which I know fans are not always appreciative of, but being there on the field for an early kickoff is like the best thing for me on a Saturday. This year, though, I won't be traveling initially. I usually go to see people and visit, have things to do. I don't get to see much of the game. I usually get to watch a little bit. And in this environment, you cannot just walk freely and visit, and say hello and talk. So I'll be in Birmingham, either in my home office or my office watching throughout the day, just learning from what's happening, adapting if we need to. We have staff assigned to each game. They're going to be doing that from a distance. So watching generally in our video center for issues that may arise. And that'll be the norm, Clay, to begin. Probably the first few weeks, and we'll just see how it goes and what that means for travel. But I won't sleep probably Friday night. I'm sure I'll be up early. The foot will be tapping as we get to kick off just to see it happen.
Did you believe that this was actually going to happen? Now that we know that college football has kicked off, the ACC, the Big 12 have, it's not going to go perfectly smooth. I think everybody out there would acknowledge that. But back in early August, did you ever think that the SEC would be able to play in the fall? Did you think college football? Kind of take us through what it was like, the progression of, the highs and some of the lows in trying to get to the eve of college football kicking off for the SEC.
Yeah, the roller coaster, which is the best way to describe it, likely goes right back into mid-March. And if you take that March 13th, again, that was Friday, we had stopped competition through March 30, but we hadn't disrupted everything. And then on March 13th is, information was beginning to emerge, and we had people coming back from spring break. You had increasing cases or the potential of cases. You had testimony in Congress. When we stopped everything, that was, for me, a low point. Not because anything incorrect was being done. We were, in fact, doing the best we could with a lot of moving parts, but I knew that we were sending people away from their foundation. So class schedules, teams, locker rooms, competition. I really thought about baseball first, Clay, and the level of baseball we play. We have the national championship trophy still here from Vanderbilt's win, and 2019, the first round draft picks, all of that opportunity to compete and be seen, just evaporated. And then it went to the preparation for football because we had teams pulled off of the practice field that day for spring practice. And then just little things to try to coalesce in a decision-making mode for our conference. One of the hardest things was when we shut everything down, it was nothing, like no weight rooms, no group gatherings by Zoom, which seems normal now. And so the effort to go from 0 hours of team meetings on iPads to 2 hours, was just kind of an angry debate, and a lot of stress. And so you just kind of went through those things. Come back June 8th, we had some tension around when can we come back to voluntary activities, and then can we continue to accelerate. And then you had just media perspectives that were not going to be supportive, which is fine. You can be critical, but some of the criticism wasn't attached to real information, it seemed, and we're all trying to figure it out. Then you go into August, and there were a few tough weekends, late July, early August, as you're watching speculation, decisions, commentary, and then, colleague conferences stop. But we had made decisions that we were going to take our time in decision-making because there's so much information that continues to emerge, every day. We've all seen that, from day to day, information changes. And one of the things said to me early on was if you can take as long as possible to make major decisions, you'll have better information when you actually have to make those decisions because we're learning new things every day. And so that became a mantra for us that got us through some of the tougher times in late July and early August. And I should have answered the question with this, I observed to some media folks, our TV partners, I'm like, I don't know if I can make it to September 26th, just early August. But if we can get to the start line, I feel pretty good about being able to conduct the season. Now, it may be different than we've ever experienced, but if I can just get to the start line, so it's gratifying to be, a day before the start line when still nothing's guaranteed, but at least we've made it here.
I got to give you credit, and we've known each other for a pretty decent amount of time now, but you, I think, uniquely in a very difficult situation, managed to keep things as calm as you can in a chaotic situation. And also, there's a lot of noise out there, right? And a lot of times what I always try to focus on is what's the noise that matters, right? What's the information that I need to be able to grab that's cutting through? Not necessarily the emotion, not necessarily all of the din of all of the noise all day long. And this is not just you and me. This is everybody, right? Everybody's phone's constantly dinging. Everybody's constantly getting text messages, notifications. And sometimes you can get deluged by an overflow of information and not be able to kind of get to the essence of what matters the most. And what you told me, and I think you said it on this show, and I don't think I'm giving away any confidence by saying it because I think you said it publicly, but what you said has been proven to be 100% true here. You said, look, when our kids get back on campus in early, mid to late August, we're going to see an infection rate, increase substantially. That's what my experts tell me. That's what you said. That's what you saw. And then you said, we're pushing back to September 26th because they also tell me that we should then be able to get some control of it, and the numbers should be coming down by the time we get to late September. We're past the Labor Day and all of those things. That's been proven to be 100% true. How difficult was it to be able to get to that idea and trust it, right, with all of the noise that was out there?
There's a couple elements to that. So I read a book a few years ago by Nate Silver called The Signal and the Noise.
Yeah, I've read it too, which is that's why I use that phrase, signal and the noise. Nate Silver is a brilliant guy, but the metaphor that he used, being able to figure out what matters within that context, That's exactly what I was referencing. It's a great read.
Just the title stuck with me, and I have other notes that I made, but what is it that's just a bunch of noise, and what do you really have to pay attention to? And I'm fortunate to have a lot of bright people around me in our office, on our campuses. So that was the first part, is recognizing that, there are going to be a lot of critics, and there still are. And I actually use that in communicating with our campus leaders, athletics department leaders, to say part of our challenge will be to weather kind of the storm here, weather the noise, not numbers, not positive tests, not anything really around the virus directly, but the indirect impact. So we kind of message that repeatedly and have walked through it together. But then you have to give credit to our campuses. And I think this is a twist on much of what you've read over the last year or last month, which is numbers. But our campuses had worked with their communities. They had adapted content delivery, which is how we're conducting classes. Not every plan is perfect, especially the first time through, but they updated isolation, testing. We had a lot of aggressive testing taking place on campuses. I saw a note earlier this week from the University of Georgia where they released their total campus numbers that dropped by like 80% in the last 2 weeks, 85% downward trend. People had to learn how to function in the new environment. When you bring more people into a community, those who've been there, like our student athletes, are affected by that. So we had to address that concern. And we're 3 weeks past now the last first day of classes, so the last point of startup of residential learning on our universities. They're still moving through. They've all had to adjust, and all of that informed what we did. And it's like the SEC. So when we adjusted to the 26th, and people had asked, what's the primary reason? The primary reason was we have to have our campuses come back to life, and we have to allow time. We have to prepare for disruption related to that. And I think the cynics would kind of sniff at that, but that was reality. We exist to support our universities. And in fact, maybe just the last note, our football players on one of our video conferences were asking, why are we bringing students back? We've learned all they can do is mess it up for us. Just tell them to stay away and we can play football. And, you're explaining, well, that's really not what we do in higher education. You're a part of a campus, and I appreciated their passion. But it's just a reality we saw, and we knew it would have to be there. And it's not been just easy. It's not been normal, but it's a tribute to all of our campus leaders and athletics department leaders that were to this point.
When the Big Ten and the Pac-12 shut down and you get official word that they are shutting down, what was your immediate reaction?
I had a pretty good sense, particularly with the Pac-12 situation, of what was going to take place, and had been asked about our direction. And my feedback was we were going to be if we were going to pull the plug, it would be much later. We had adjusted our season at that point. We had delayed the start of padded practice into like late August. So we had created space for decision making for ourselves. And the public health restrictions on the West Coast kind of dictated their outcome. The Big Ten, probably a little bit more rapidly developing, but I was one who thought about us. So it wasn't the most comfortable circumstance, but my focus was on communicating with our members. Their focus was on what's the right decision for our campus and our conference. And so it was uncomfortable. But I issued a statement, I think it was on August 10th, and we monitor social media. And Clay, when I said we're going to pay attention to what other people do, but it's not going to cause us to simply follow. I forget the exact words I used. It was we're going to continue on, basically. The word cloud was dominated by the word hope. Like the good feedback was the word hope. And nothing else was close. And I've kept that on my desk for now a month and a half, because I think that word kind of defined what we do in a way, which is a connection to something. And providing hope that we could make this happen. No guarantees, but hope was meaningful to people in a lot of ways.
There was a lot of negativity, and it goes back to the kind of that signal in the noise, like where every time there is a negative story in the world of sports, I'm not just talking about college football, I'm talking about if it's Major League Baseball, the Marlins test positive, and a lot of people say, oh my God, you got to shut down baseball. The same thing happened in virtually every sport early on, MLS. You guys have built in some leeway here. How optimistic are you about where you are starting and the system that is in place that could lead you all the way through to December 19th as we kind of look forward, as much as you can look forward and be optimistic about what anything's going to happen in the country?
Right. I'm not going to be comfortable. I think that's just our reality, is one of we're not going to be comfortable yet. We have a plan. The plan has worked, so we're sitting here a day out, still moving forward. 3 weeks ago, that I think that was going to happen. I'm grateful to be here, but I knew there were no guarantees. There's no guarantees about tomorrow. I learned that on March 11th, 12th, and 13th when we were in Nashville. But we put a plan in place. We also have medical advisors who will help us adapt. Clay, the mantra of the circumstances around the virus are going to dictate our path forward. So we are a bit at the mercy of personal conduct, taking care of oneself, heeding public health warnings. We are at the mercy of test results. We've done everything we can to put the right kind of programs in place, but all of our participants have to pay attention to the expectations. You know what? I don't like wearing a mask, but I know it helps. It helps us avoid problems. And we added Connexon devices for tracking and tracing, both in-game primarily, but even during the week to remind us to stay away, to prevent or lessen the threat of spread. And we have to be attentive. And when you go back to like the Major League Baseball circumstance was happening as we were coming down to the finish line of making decisions, and I had said, baseball will be a really good learning example for us because they're moving from city to city, and they're not playing in this bubble environment. And, lo and behold, they had a set of issues, but they've weathered those. And I think with any of these things, you're going to have to weather through some of this disruption. And we've seen that in college football. We saw it in Major League Baseball. NASCAR hasn't been terribly affected, which is fascinating to me. I think they've had one or two drivers affected, Jimmy Johnson being the most prominent. But it's an indication you can move around a lot. You can have a lot of people. If you adapt properly, pay attention to the expectations and the health guidance, you can compete and participate in a pretty much healthy manner.
It's been a lot of different twists and turns, but what letter grade would you give the SEC athletes, not just football players, but everybody in fall sports as we get closer to tomorrow's kickoff?
It's probably in different ways. So when we brought people back in June, they sort of went back to life, and you could go Google reports about isolations and test numbers. And so there was a quick learning experience that, life is not like it was the last time I was on campus. And so the early, the first quiz grade probably wasn't great, and it's progressed. And, again, anything can happen, but, we're in an A category with fall sports, but knowing things can happen because we're in a dynamic environment. So we've had to reschedule 2 soccer games already. That doesn't mean we have Fs, but you're going to have little circumstances that can have big implications. But they've learned the conversations, and we haven't had a football leadership video conference in about a month because they've been busy. But the questions they ask, go back to the Washington Post article, where an hour and a half of just honest Q&A about what we know, what we don't know, what we control, and what we cannot control. I think that's the kind of thing we do in education. There's nothing wrong with that. It's not something you want secretly recorded and written, but that's what we're supposed to do. So I think they've all learned. And then as more sports came back, they've had to go through that same learning cycle. So as I understand on our campuses, we have a few whose early quiz grades have not been great, but I'm pretty confident they'll learn and adjust and move forward in a healthy way, just like we've seen through the summer. So the fact we're here means we've got an A on the report card at this point. But I would just say even a disruption like we've had in soccer doesn't mean you just go to an F. It's just the reality around this virus and how it can dictate some outcomes that we don't necessarily want to see, but that's reality now.
Last question for you, and we're talking with SEC Commissioner Greg Sankey, and we appreciate him coming and joining us on the eve of the return of SEC football. College Football Playoff Committee. Obviously, different conferences are making different decisions about coming back. There are going to be different games that are played, probably, different schedules. It's going to be hard to assess different conference strengths because there's no out-of-conference. How excited are you in some ways just to be even able to have that debate given where you were in June, July, and August?
Very. And it's so, like now, all of a sudden, I've had more questions about bowl games this week.
Yes.
Like, I haven't even played a football game. And then I had a question about, how many conference games are you going to play next season?
Yeah.
I'm like, let me play one this season. And how about I talk about 2021 and maybe, 2021. So, yeah, if we're at a selection day, that's a victory. We'll be doing it in a healthy manner. But if we're to Selection Day, December 20th, that's really healthy. And then if you look more broadly at the selection committee, they have a kind of a charging document that talks about games and evaluating games. We've heard about data points. So we've built in, I think, the 10 best data points possible, 10 SEC games. We've all lost the high-quality non-conference games. ACC has 11. They have a one non-conference situation, and then 10 within the conference. And then we've got somebody trying to play 8, Big 12's at 9 plus 1. Then I don't know what happens, fully out west. We're kind of seeing that story emerging, right? So,
yeah,
we got 10 games, the most rigorous schedule in college football historically. I don't expect this year to be any different. We'll learn some things, and ultimately on December 20th, I'll have a knot in my stomach over CFP selection, but I'll have a little bit of breathing room if we're at a point where we've named a champion and have completed a season in a positive and healthy way.
By the way, you never would have believed that I would say this to you, and you'd be ecstatic to hear it, but I hope you have a bunch of officiating controversies, and that's the number one story that comes out Sunday and Monday for you. You've never rooted for it before, but if everybody's up in arms over whether a call was made, that means that things went pretty daggone normal for SEC football coming back.
Yeah, I have, like right now I have any types of commentary on transfer waivers and officiating, and I'm like, we're playing football. Somebody said, why haven't you done this, this, and this? I got this email this morning. I'm like, I don't know. I've been busy the last 6 months trying to just figure out how to play a football game. So that takes a little bit of time. But, normal, I think, is important for our society right now. I'm not a sociologist. I took one class like my sophomore year in college. But I think some attachment to normal, whether it's a radio show like this or on our scale, seeing college football played is a healthy thing, provided it can be done in a healthy way, and that's what we're prepared to do.
I really do believe this. You've done an incredible job, and I believe more so than anybody else involved in college football, you're the reason that college football is happening. So congratulations. Enjoy the games kicking off tomorrow, and I hope you take a moment to just think about all the people that I know have been helping and working with you, but all that you've accomplished to make it happen and help to bring that sense of normalcy to many people across the country. Great job.
Yeah, I appreciate that. That's a tribute to a lot of folks. And, one thing I've learned about leadership this summer is there's all these books. Leadership's about tomorrow. And that's the reality, is you can do really good things today, and people will, clap for you. And whatever you do tomorrow is going to be judged on its merits. So we're going to move to tomorrow. And, man, it'd be great to play 7 SEC football games. That would just be an incredible start, no matter what the complaints may be. But to accomplish that, in a way, it's for us monumental, given where we were 2 months ago, and where we were 2 months ago, and where we were 2 months ago, and where we were